I hear one of the new arrivals survived, Warden Rook said, sipping amber liquid from a crystal tumbler. Standing tall and proud, he peered through his window atop the southern wall. While most of the guards had personal quarters within the barracks, the warden lived high above them all, watching, always watching. Not his companions? Kiva shook her head, perched stiffly in his sitting room, barely an hour after leaving Jaren with Nari outside their cell block. Both dead. Rook murmured, swirling his liquor. With dark skin, cropped hair, and a short beard, he looked like many of the other burly guards. But it was his scar that set him apart, cutting above and below his right eye like an interrupted diamond. That, and the authority that dripped off him, enhanced by his black leather uniform all the way down to his perfectly polished boots. The survivor was covered in blood. Is he badly damaged? Careful. Always so damn careful about the information she shared, Kiva answered. Nothing permanent. Warden Rook smiled, his dark eyes crinkling at the corners. Good. That's good. Another able-bodied male. That was all that mattered to the warden. Never mind that Zalandov was already bursting at the seams, even with the excessive mortality rate. In the 10 years Kiva had lived at the prison, she'd come to accept that the warden wasn't an evil man, but he was coldly pragmatic and powerful. So very powerful, with a heavy burden of responsibility on his shoulders. His jurisdiction over Zalandov meant he answered not to one kingdom, but to all of them, since all of their condemned citizens were jailed under his watch. But while he did have to obey direct orders from the rulers of all 8 territories, he was mostly left to his own devices, trusted to oversee the day-to-day management of the inmates and guards without supervision. How he did that was his business. Kiva held little love for Warden Rook. Her allegiance to him was a means for survival, nothing more. But even so, she knew that she and her fellow inmates could have done a lot worse. Rook, at least, had a sense of morality, limited as it was. She didn't want to imagine what might happen if the Butcher or Bones or any of the other more abusive guards were given the position of warden. Nothing would be left but blood and ashes. Have you anything else to tell me tonight, Kiva? The warden was watching her closely. He was smart, she knew. Too smart for her liking. He lived and worked among the worst kinds of people and had long since learned how to read them. How to read her. The prisoners are unhappy, she answered, but you already know that. Rook sighed, taking another sip of his drink. There's always trouble at this time of year. They're hungry, cold, tired. There's little I can do about any of that. Kiva disagreed, but she remained silent. More food rations, warmer clothes and blankets, shorter work hours. These were all things the warden could change, but prisoners weren't supposed to be comfortable. None of them were in Zalandov for a holiday. They were there to work and then to die. What about the rebels? Rook asked. Kiva shifted in her seat, the warden tracking her every move. Is Cresta still leading them? He prompted. Licking her lips, Kiva nodded slowly and said, As far as I'm aware. Rook's eyes narrowed as he repeated, As far as you're aware? She forced herself to meet his gaze. The rebels don't like me, especially Cresta. Kiva couldn't blame them. As Rook's informant, reluctant or not, she'd well earned their scorn. They don't keep me apprised of their leaders or their plans. That was about as close as Kiva ever dared to show any kind of backbone. But after years of these meetings with the warden, she felt safer with him than any of the other guards. She had reason to, even if she knew her allegiance didn't guarantee her safety. The warden rubbed his temple. Kiva, you know I respect you, care for you even. You've proved your skills as a healer time and time again, and you've earned my regard through your years of service. Because of that, I must warn you. Kiva braced herself. The day is coming when I'm going to need more from you. Rook continued. The rebels within the prison are becoming a problem. I can only assume it's because their movement outside is advancing, with rebel numbers growing every day as that queen of theirs leads them to slaughter. The fools. Rook shook his head, as if pitying them. Kiva's heart rate doubled. Any mention of the outside world had her aching for more. In the last decade, she'd only managed to hear snippets of what was happening beyond Zalandov's walls. When she'd first arrived at the prison, the rebel movement had been little more than a group of impassioned nomads searching for their long-lost queen, whispering about how she had a legitimate claim to the throne of Evelon. Treasonous words with grave consequences for those caught by the royal guard. It was only after Kiva's imprisonment that she heard their queen had come out of hiding and was now leading their cause, seeking one thing: vengeance. Not justice, not a chance to debate why the crown belonged to her. No, the rebel queen wanted revenge for all that had been taken from her, for all that she'd lost, for the kingdom and its power that should have been hers at birth. From what Kiva had gleaned over the last few years, the rebel queen was slowly, very slowly, beginning to take ground. Rook called them fools. Kiva wasn't so sure. They have an energy, a spark that's building. The warden went on, still talking about the imprisoned rebels. It might not be much yet, but the smallest spark can cause a flame, and I want to avoid that, for their sakes. Kiva shuddered at the look in his eyes. The rebels inside Zalandov would meet a swift death if Rook or any of the guards caught so much as a hint of them plotting anything. Whether it was escape on their minds or something simpler like stirring up the other prisoners or even rallying more numbers to their side, it didn't matter. If they acted out in any way, their lives would be forfeited. It was difficult for Kiva to feel compassion for them. They should have been smarter, should have kept their heads down, rather than being careless enough to draw the warden's attention. They'd dug their own graves, as far as she was concerned. Her expression must have told Rook as much, since he sighed again, louder this time. Just see what you can learn before I next summon you, he said. Throwing back the last of his liquor, he locked eyes with her and finished. Skilled healer or not, I can find others to work in the infirmary. Your worth lies in what you can tell me. I need more information, Kiva. Better information. He turned to look out the window again, his dismissal clear, leaving Kiva to be escorted down from the wall by another guard, her heart heavy and her stomach knotted. She couldn't give Rook what he wanted. She hadn't lied to him. Zalandov's rebels loathed her, seeing her as little more than the warden's spy. Their assumed leader, Cresta, was the last person in the world who would ever trust Kiva with information. And yet, Kiva would do as she always had. She would find a way to meet Rook's demands. She would live another day. She had to, if she ever wanted to see her family again. One way or another, whatever it took, she would figure out how to glean the knowledge he desired.